Welcome to Tony at 12. I'm Tony LeBlanc, and today I'm in conversation with Louis Jean, former Vice President and retired member of the States of Alderney. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Tony.
And it's been a little while since we've had a chat on Tony at 12, so there we are. We can have
Yes,
a
it
look at
has.
a whole load of things this afternoon, Louis. But first of all, the government reform business. They want to switch from committee government to executive government. Now, you were sort of involved. I think it was starting up when you were still on the States. Doesn't seem to be going anywhere, does it?
No, it isn't going anywhere. And I must say, I'm rather pleased at the moment it's not, because I think there are so many inexperienced states members and they haven't had enough time there to actually know how the states works over 2 or 3 years. And this was one of the points I made. One of the things that did happen in the original stab at government reform, when the number of the states was reduced to 10 and the terms of office changed from 3 years to 4.
Yeah.
One of the things that happened then was I pointed out that there could be a risk of actually having a hung election through increasing the term of office, because in those days there wasn't any pay.
Yeah.
This was before I left the first time round. There was no pay, and the fact was that I was concerned that increasing the term of office would lead to a situation, one where it was more daunting for people to actually go for office, knowing that they were in for 4 years instead of 3, and that the election cycle, which had been drawn up in those days by the Home Office in around 1948, that there would be 3 standing for election every 2 years. And that was a good idea, because the way I described it in my speech at the time was that the cake had been cut up in small slices, and that was enough for the island to cope with. I also said that if the terms carried on to any length, you could have a risk of a hung election. And I said, at a people's meeting recently, when they were talking about government reform, I've lost you. I've lost the picture of you. Does that matter?
No, it's okay. I can
Okay.
see you. Keep
Sorry
going.
about that. So what it did was as I said, there could be a hung election, and the point was that I raised at the people's meeting on government reform was that although I couldn't have been deemed right at the time, and for several elections after, nothing was untoward. And then, as I explained, there were 2 or 3 that were hung, that there were no candidates who stood for the role, and they were hung. And basically, really, that means that I was correct,
Yeah.
but that there were too many candidates standing, and not enough people wanted to fill the vacancies. And so you started to have hung elections.
Tell me, Louis, why is it that we've seen a trend over the last few elections whereby new people suddenly get elevated to being chair of the Policy and Finance Committee? I'm not
No, no, no,
degrading them
no.
at all, but surely you need a bit of experience within the states to be able to do the job.
That is such a good question, Tony. I do agree with you, and I have raised it at people's meetings. I raised it during the government reform, and basically what I said was this: that it seems to me difficult to accept that always the chairmanship of PNF goes to the new kid on the block.
Yeah,
And if anybody, for instance, I stood for it 3 times, but I wasn't going to get it. And I explained why, that I may have angered this person,
yeah,
upset that person, or the other person felt I was unsuitable because of my politics and my beliefs not quite agreeing with theirs.
Mm.
And so what it basically means is that anybody on the states existing hasn't got a hope of getting the chairmanship, and it's the new kid on the block that gets it. And I think that that's actually quite dangerous,
Yeah.
because you really don't know the new kid on the block. Now, I have actually been over in Guernsey when new chairman of P&F have made terrible mistakes. And one of them was that an offer was made of £300,000 towards the deficit of Aurimi.
Yeah.
And that was accepted by the Economic and Development Committee. And I had to disagree in the room with the Guernsey committee and our Alderney colleagues present, because I said that you cannot do it. It cannot be done. It's over the figure that
Yeah.
you can do that. Not only that, I explained it has to go to P&F on the agenda, which it hasn't. After that, I said it has to be put forward with a vote wanting it to go on the billet from P&F. Then there's inclusion in the billet. Then I said there's the people's meeting to gather the public views. And I said after that, a states debate and a vote. And I said, you've done none of that. And I said, I can't be part of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was a new chairman
Yeah.
in office who just didn't know the ropes.
Yeah. I mean, what would you like to see? Serve 2 years before you can stand for it, say?
That's what I said, that there should be probably a term served
Yeah.
before these people could do that. And also the same for government reform,
Yeah.
that they shouldn't be allowed to touch government reform until they've done a 4-year term.
Yeah.
Not
Fair
allowed
enough. Yeah. Now,
to
we recently saw at the states meeting problems with the president being accused of bias. This was in the Guernsey Press. Now, as vice president, you obviously had to chair the states on several occasions. Is it difficult not to show favour, or how does that work?
I never did myself actually chair a meeting at the States
Right.
of Alderney. I think I should make that very clear.
Yeah.
But I don't think a president should be biased. And if that's true, it's very difficult. And I have to say, I had my own problems with the last president. And it was one of the reasons why I stood against him. And when he was successful, which I'm very glad for him, I stepped back away from the States because I no longer wished to serve under his administration. I
Yeah.
didn't agree with him, and our disagreement was a very bad one.
Yeah. 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 Now, one of the things they're talking about at the moment is a minimum wage on Alderney. Now, it seems to me that a lot of employers will just unload labour because they won't be able to necessarily match the minimum wage. What are your views on that?
My views on that, first of all, I would take a very strong line towards the people who are not getting a minimum wage,
Mm.
and there's a reason for that. And uh, one of the explanations I can give to you is that gas and oil have gone up here a very great deal. In actual fact, since December of last year to May, oil has gone up by over £200,
Yeah.
which for an average family raises a cost of around £20 a month
Yeah.
extra for their oil. That's a very great deal of money. And the problem is quite a lot of other things are rising in cost here too. And the people who are not on the minimum wage are definitely having an enormous struggle. And I believe that that's the priority reason for bringing it in. If people do let some of their staff go because of it, I'm very sorry. That's a byproduct that I wouldn't wish to see happen. But at the same time, I think at the moment, when you're looking at these incredible cost rises that are going
Yeah.
on here, I mean, even today, even recently, the ferry, a £15 rise because the state subsidy's been withdrawn. the point is, all of this stuff is going up, but we haven't got the minimum wage here. That can't be right.
Yeah, yeah. So you would support it as a concept?
I would, and I've been to the people's meeting and I've raised it and spoken about it, and they tell me that the reason that it hasn't happened is because the law officers haven't had the time to deal with it. Well, my belief is that it's time they ask the law officers to push it further up the queue. It needs to be dealt with, and it needs to be given to these people. They're struggling.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now, we've got the Bailiwick Commission that has recently started opening its doors and doing consultations. Do you think it's going to achieve anything? Because as far as I can make out, none of its recommendations are going to be binding.
That's very interesting. And I think part of the reason that none of the recommendations can be binding is, although as a temporary arrangement, some people like to talk that way. I don't. I look upon it as a very entrenched, permanent arrangement, which is, we are far too far down the road to change it. And the reason we can't change it is that we're linked into pension schemes, we're linked into income tax, we're linked into social security payments, we're linked into everything. And if they were to say no more 1948 agreement and we're cutting Alderney adrift, that it couldn't happen, because what would have to be paid back to the people and how they would be reimbursed for what they've already paid and would be lost to them, it's not possible. So therefore, I don't think it's actually possible to alter the 1948 agreement significantly. There might be minor alterations, that's possible, but I don't think there'd be any major ones to the main core of the agreement itself.
Well, as you say, there are so many important elements in there, and for people that don't know Alderney as well as we do, health, education, police, a whole string of things that are part of the 1948 agreement called transferred services. And there's just no way 2,000 people could cope with the sort of amount of administration that would be required, and where do they get the money from? So I don't get that.
No, I also have very strong feelings about our bailiwick relationship, because to me, I'm very happy with the bailiwick relationship that we have, and I'm always very disappointed when I hear Guernsey politicians having a go at Alderney, and I'm afraid it does happen. And sometimes information of a financial nature is divulged. And we did pass an agreement during the 1990s that the Alderney subvention between profit and loss account would be buried, like the Guernsey parishes. They don't talk about any of the Guernsey parishes, their finances, in minute detail, and they shouldn't talk about Alderney's either. They should have the same respect for us as part of the bailiwick, and those are the kind of things that I want to encourage. Instead of all the backbiting, I want to encourage a good, strong, working bailiwick relationship. I think it's right and proper.
Yeah, definitely. How do you see the Alderney economy? It does appear to be in decline. If you take property sales, for example, there have been 17 this year. Usually the property market's a bit of a barometer as to where the general economy is going. What do you think about that? Seem to be a lot of £1 million new builds.
Well, I largely blame that on a lot of what's going on, the £1 million new builds, which are not as has been pointed out, answering the needs for more working accommodation for young people coming in to try to a degree, to combat the demographic time bomb that we know exists. We know that the population here is quite heavy with people who are getting older, and we do need to, and myself included. What I'm trying to say is that that problem has been partly made. I look at it by having taken away the C permit system.
Yeah.
The C permit system did give a safeguard, which did stop people coming into Alderney, buying a house with a very big garden, let's say, and then pulling down the trees and putting in planning permission for as many houses as they felt that they could get on that plot. And that has happened. And I'm not talking about any one specific scheme.
Yeah.
I'm talking about what's going on and the situation that, as you have just said, that it's mainly £1 million houses for sale here. And that's what's wrong. The letting go of the C permit system was something that I fought very hard against. And I'm very disappointed to see the result, which I expected, which has basically been a free-for-all.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, the land use plan, whilst it identifies areas that are suitable for building, it doesn't dictate the sort of buildings that should go in there. Now, in my view, the last successful bit was Brickfields, in terms of the fact that you've got a lot of fairly low priced properties into a fairly small space, but they're still comparatively affordable as far as youngsters are concerned. And we haven't seen any of this on any of the other applications, have we?
That's a very good point, Tony, and that's largely what's wrong, and the land use plan itself fails to address that. I believe it fails to address it. And I remember speaking about the original land use plan, and I was quite humorous about it at the time. When it was first completed, there were 11 books of Arab, and the 11 books of Arab were quite a height. They were nearly table height, yeah. And I said to the States, I said, well, I was going to bring the books of Arab along with me. And I said, but I realized that I would need a wheelbarrow to do it. And I said that I would have great difficulty pushing the wheelbarrow up the stairs into the courthouse. So everybody laughed at that. But what worries me now is I managed to uncover some information by attending 2 or 3 people's meetings recently. In the first meeting, there was a lady calling for the land use plan to be done. I got up and asked a question. I said, can you tell me? I said, it's been delayed and delayed. I said, can you tell me, is there any need? And this was to the chairman of Building and Development, Kevin Gentle. Can you tell me, is there any need for revision of the land use plan? And he ummed and ahed, and eventually there was nothing coming out. So I looked at him and I said, I'll take that as a no. I said, yeah. And I carried on. Anyway, 2 months passed, and all of a sudden I found that they were going into the land use plan big time, and they had accepted the most the most expensive contractor for the job, Arup, again.
Yeah.
And so I turned around and I asked questions, and the building officer herself was there, and she said that she could have done the revision of the land use plan in between her other work,
right?
And but it would compromise the list that in Guernsey, they were very lucky if within 2 to 3 months, the planning inspector managed to get round to their application. And in Alderney, she was able to do that within a week or a fortnight.
Yeah.
And she explained to me that if she had to do the amendments to the land use plan, it would mean it would take longer for her to deal with the list. And so I turned around and in my answer to that, I said to her, well, I would expect you to have the building list dealt with within a fortnight, because I said often, I said it's only for a garden shed and the removal of a sycamore tree. And I said, and if that's the case, I said, I would expect that dealt with within a fortnight. And I said, wet weather and bad days, I would expect you to be doing the amendments to the land use plan.
Yeah.
Instead, we've got a situation. I then continued at the next meeting. They had finalised and they had chosen Arab, and we roughly knew the amount, over 400,000. So I thought I'd ask another question. And that question was, as I'm looking to see what kind of value for money we're getting from this land use plan, bearing in mind it's only a revision.
Yeah.
I said, can you, Mr. Gentle, asking the chairman of Building and Development again, tell me how many amendments you've got submitted for Arab to draw into the land use plan, so that I might be better able to see what kind of value for money we're getting.
Yeah.
His reply to me was, no, Mr. Jean, we haven't got any amendments in for the land use plan. He said, we're waiting for guidance from Arab. In other words, they were waiting for Arab to make the suggestions. Well, I've never heard of anybody who's supposed to be penning the items into the revisions into the current land use plan, actually making the suggestions themselves. I can't believe that. And I immediately was very aware. So the next meeting was the budget meeting. And I went to that as well. And I made the suggestion regarding the land use plan. I reminded them of what I've just told you, which was that there were no amendments from Building and Development for Arab to incorporate into the land use plan, and that they were awaiting guidance from Arab. And I turned round and I said, it's quite clear that this expenditure is unnecessary and could be withdrawn from the budget. And I said, and should be withdrawn from the budget. Now, over 400,000 spent for nothing.
Crazy. I mean, I can understand why they wanted them in the first place, to actually get a list, a map, or whatever, a plan as to how they saw things going forward. But I would have thought after that, doesn't need any real fine tuning, and you certainly don't want to pay out £400,000 for the privilege. Just crazy.
No,
but there we are. They're talking about leasehold reform, trying to get the banks on board in terms of being able to lend on leasehold properties. Once again, one wonders whether the law officers are sort of creating a situation where it's not going through as quickly as it could.
I sincerely hope that it does happen, because it's a really serious impediment for people trying to get together the way of it all to own their own homes. And that's a very serious and a very sad situation. And I believe that the states should push and push hard to get it rectified. I don't know how many institutions they could get to do that, but I think that they should approach more than one, and perhaps more than two, and try to get on with it. And if that falls down, they should approach another three and try to get something going here. This is a lovely place, and young people want to own their own homes.
Of course they do.
And I think it's very serious that they can't get their leasehold. It's really wrong.
Possible regulation of rented property down in Guernsey, apparently. You have to have an electrical test, asbestos inspection. Do you see that happening here?
As you know, I am an owner of property.
Yep.
It is of concern. Um, I think that most of my places are free of that, but the point is, if you have a lot of over regulation here, you only get a very small amount of rental compared to what Guernsey get.
Yeah, yeah.
Guernsey can get 1,500, 2,000 for a flat. Here you can get 700, 800 if you're able. So it's literally below, well below half price here in Alderney. And I don't know that that kind of regulation isn't over regulation and whether it's necessary here.
We'll have to watch that space, as it were.
We have to watch that space. But somebody did approach me and they said to me, "Oh, you'd have a problem." And I said, "No, I wouldn't have a problem because I do my level best." And I am talking about me personally.
Yeah.
To keep my places up to snuff.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to rent a place to anyone that was of a poor standard. I mean, if I'm taking a rent for it, I want people to be happy in it. I want the electric to work. I want the floors to be as nice as I can have them, and the decor and the kitchens and bathrooms and everything working. And it's important.
Yeah.
If you give a good product, people are happy with it.
Absolutely.
I try to. Whether my tenants are happy with it or not, I do try.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. Now, come on to Alderney. Are they making a major contribution to the decline in the economy? I mean, that forum we went to recently was a bit of a farce, I thought. And they just don't seem to get the fact that we need connectivity to make the island work.
You're so right again. I didn't go to the forum.
Well, you didn't waste your time.
I went to the meeting up at the airport, and I listened to the schmooze. The one thing I managed to do there was talk about the costs of the airfares, and when Nick Poseidenhausen's remarks on that were quite interesting. I talked about the high cost of the fares, and he said to me, yes. He said, when I came to Guernsey and I took up the job, he said, I looked at the Alderney fare structure and I thought, this is crazy fares. He went, crazy fares.
Okay.
And I thought that was a good answer because to me, there are two things need to happen with Alderney. And one is the publication of the accounts.
Yeah.
And we've never managed to get that ever. And one of the things that Alderney says about that is that they would be revealing their tactics to their opposition. Now, my view on that is the publication of a recipe for failure is hardly revealing something that any other airline would really want to know about.
And the only competition at the moment is every day with British Airways, isn't there?
I think it's a shame. That it really is a terrible shame.
Me too.
Because like, for instance, you had the meeting that you went to, which I wouldn't go to, and then literally the next day, it's all falling down again, and it's still not working, despite all the schmooze and the assurances. We're going to do something. We're going to get together, and it's going to get better, and it just doesn't.
No. And of course, part of the problem is the fact that they really need a dedicated Medivac service.
The Medivac service is very, very important, and I think it could have been if we had enough planes. But some of the things that have happened lately, like the reduction in the so-called subsidy for Alderney, have not helped. And we really don't know the truth of any of it unless the accounts are published. Without publication of the accounts, we're we're arguing on difficult ground. We haven't the tools to argue with properly. But the only thing I would say about that is my view of a bailiwick relationship is that you do your level best for each other.
Yeah.
And I went to the Guernsey States and I talked about the days twice I was there when they were renewing the Condor contract.
Yeah.
And twice I spoke of them, and I wrote to people as well. I wrote to Guernsey politicians and made the suggestion that the link be brought back between Condor and Alderney, and that it would cost the States of Guernsey nothing, because what they would say is that in return for the millions worth of trade that Condor at that time did, I know it's not called Condor now,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but
Brittany
anyway,
Ferries now.
Brittany Ferries, but it was
Yeah.
Condor in those days.
Yeah.
And I said that you could bring back, say to them, you could supply a 40-seater and run a shuttle between Alderney and Guernsey, like the hydrofoils used to.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And I couldn't get anybody here to bite on the idea, any of the politicians. None of them helped me here, and none of them would help me in Guernsey. And yet I'm sure, Tony, that I'm right about that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that if that was the kind of thing that took place when they negotiate the contract with Condor, and they say to them, look, we want you to re-establish, similar to the hydrofoil service, a shuttle link between the mother island and Alderney.
Yeah.
Now that's what I call bailiwick relationship.
Yeah.
That's bailiwick relationship working as it should. And why did we lose that, Tony?
Yeah.
Why did we lose that?
Yeah. It's crazy.
What
about the runway? What about the runway, Louis?
The runway, well, the runway is a sad situation. It's a situation that's gone on now between my time and now, still ongoing. And we hear that they are going to stick to the schedule and the program. It's a case of wait and see. I hope they do. I think the wear and tear on the runway is probably a little less now through the introduction of otters. There are so many things that Alderney can't do anymore.
Yeah.
Because of the airline. You couldn't afford at that price to go for a day's shopping. People used to go for a meal, shopping, they'd bring back 4 or 5 carrier bags full of stuff with them.
Yeah.
And they'd have a wonderful day out, and they would use the airline. And the more these costs have risen, the less people use the airline, to the point that I'm amazed that they can even contemplate running an airline with one aeroplane. And that actually shows you the state that it's all come to.
Yeah.
It's
pretty
bad.
I mean, I can remember when we first came here 40 years ago, Don Waters, who had that electrical shop.
Yes.
You know, they'd fly fridges over in this Frylanders, all sorts of things. Nothing was impossible.
I brought clocks and all sorts over, and they would take it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, they would take your stuff, and there was room in the plane. Now there's never any room in the plane. You can't go shopping.
Yeah.
You've had it, you know, so you think to yourself, wouldn't I like to go for a day's shopping in Guernsey?
Yeah, of course.
But you can't.
It's not there anymore.
You can't bring it back. You can only bring so many kilos back.
Yeah. They're talking about fuel at the airport. That has got to be a good move if they can pull that off. Aviation fuel and jet fuel.
Last time there was this problem with fuel when Mr. Michaelides left the airport. We were talking to Alderney Electricity, and Alderney Electricity wasn't keen. And in the end, I said to the States, I said, we keep talking to them, but if they're not keen, I said, you change tack, because the because Alderney Electricity is nearly 90% owned by the States of Alderney,
Yeah.
I said, as part of the States of Alderney, you tell them you're going up there.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid, Tony, the time has come to stop the dancing around
Yeah.
and tell
Yeah.
Alderney that they must oblige and they've got to go up there and get the fuel running again. And there probably has to be some capital assistance from the States of Alderney
Yeah, of
to
course.
get it
Yeah.
on the run
Yeah.
again. But Alderney Electricity have got to be, if they're unwilling to do it, and they are, I think, unwilling to do it, at the end of the day, if there's no one else, Alderney Electricity must be told, you're going up there. We need you to go up there.
Yeah.
It's vital. It's vital for several reasons. One is you'll be bringing in two more passengers per flight.
Yeah.
The second reason that it should happen is because there's literally no light aircraft trade here anymore.
That's right.
They can't fill up. Now that's serious for the golf club. It's serious for all the clubs on Alderney.
All the hospitality.
It's serious for the whole of hospitality.
Yeah.
Because these people came in and they spent and they bought lunches and meals and sometimes dropped into the hotel and stayed overnight or 2 nights. They need to be able to get their fuel. And one of the interesting things that did happen years ago was they had a sale of fuel at the airport.
Right.
And the reason they had the sale of fuel was because the fuel was getting near to its expiry date.
Okay.
And they needed to move it on. They dropped the price, and a whole host of light aircraft came into Alderney to fuel up, and they went around and they stayed, and a lot of light aircraft came in to take advantage of that. Now, that's an interesting lesson learned. And it might be a good idea for the states, in conjunction with Aurigny, to look at their own fuel taxes and whether they could show a competitive rate on the sale of fuel.
Absolutely, yeah.
That might be enough to encourage a lot of light aircraft trade back into Alderney. That's something that I believe could be looked at.
Yeah, I think as ever, you're right on that. I'm sorry to have to say, Mr. John, we've run out of time.
As quickly as that? Goodness me.
I reckon we've done about 38 minutes, so there we are. But can I say it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. See you again sometime, because you talk a lot of wisdom.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Louis.
Thank you
very much.